Every June, millions of gardeners plant the same crops they saw in the same videos and wonder why half of them fail by August. It's not because they didn't work hard enough. It's not because they bought bad seeds. It's because the advice they followed was written for someone living in a completely different climate. A gardener in Minnesota and a gardener in Florida are not living in the same June. What grows for one will fail completely for the other, and most videos never tell you that. This video is different. We're covering 11 crops you can still plant right now and harvest before summer ends, and for every single one, I'll tell you exactly which region it works for, which region should plant something else instead, and what mistake most people make that kills the harvest before it even starts. Find your region. Let's go. Before we get into the crops, you need to know which of these 4 groups you belong to. No zone maps. No complicated charts. Just answer this one question. What does your summer actually feel like? If your winters have snow and your summers rarely break 85 degrees, you're in the cool north. Think Minnesota, Michigan, Maine, most of Canada. If you have 4 distinct seasons and summer temperatures sit somewhere between 85 and 90 degrees, you're in the temperate zone. Think Ohio, Pennsylvania, Oregon, Colorado, the Pacific Northwest. If your summers are consistently hot but you still get cool nights and a real fall, you're in the upper south. Think North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, Northern California. If your summers stay above 90 degrees for 2 months or longer and humidity makes it feel even worse, you're in the hot south. Think Florida, Texas, Arizona, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi. That's it. Remember your group because starting with the very first crop, everything changes. Let's start with the good news. The first 3 crops on this list don't care where you live. Cool north, hot south, anywhere in between these work. If you're overwhelmed about your climate, start here. Crop 1 Basil. Basil is the fastest harvest on this entire list. Plant it now and you're picking leaves in as little as 30 days. It thrives in heat, loves full sun, and grows well in every region across the country. The only exception if you're in a high-altitude area where nights drop below 50 degrees, grow it in a container and bring it inside after dark. Here's the one tip that doubles your harvest. When your basil plant reaches about 6 inches tall, pinch off the top, right at the center stem. That single action forces the plant to push out 2 new branches instead of 1, and every time you do it, the plant gets bushier and produces more leaves. The mistake that kills most basil plants letting it flower. The moment you see flower buds forming, pinch them off immediately. Once basil flowers, the leaves lose most of their flavor within 48 hours, and the plant stops producing. Stay on top of it, and you'll have fresh basil all the way to frost. Crop 2, Swiss chard. Most people don't think of Swiss chard as a summer crop. That's exactly why it belongs on this list. While spinach and lettuce bolt and die in June heat, Swiss chard keeps growing. It's a biennial, meaning it won't flower in its first season no matter how hot it gets or how long the days are. That makes it the only leafy green you can plant in June and harvest continuously through September. Baby leaves are ready in 30 days, full leaves in 40 to 60 days. Plant rainbow varieties, and you get color in the garden on top of that. The key to getting the most out of Swiss chard: always harvest the outer leaves first and leave the center growth intact. The plant keeps pushing new leaves from the center all season long. Pull from the outside, leave the inside, and one planting feeds you for months. One warning for dry climates: Arizona, New Mexico, parts of Colorado. Inconsistent watering makes the stems tough and bitter. Mulch heavily around the base and water evenly every single day. Crop 3, green onions, scallions. Scallions are one of the most underrated crops for June planting. 30 days from sets, 60 to 70 days from seed. They grow in every region, take up almost no space, and you can tuck them into any empty corner of your garden. One practical reality for June sets are almost impossible to find at garden centers this time of year. They're a spring and fall item. Direct sow seeds instead. You'll harvest a few weeks later, but you'll still have fresh scallions well before summer ends. For hot south gardeners, scallions have shallow roots and dry out fast. Water more frequently than you think you need to. One dry day in peak summer heat is enough to stress the entire planting. The best way to grow them: plant densely, about an inch apart, and thin them out by pulling and eating as they grow. You control the weeds, and you get a continuous harvest at the same time. Those 3 crops work everywhere. The next group is different, and this is where most gardening advice starts to fall apart depending on where you live. These are the crops you see in every single June gardening video. Zucchini, bush beans, cucumbers, pole beans. And they're also the crops that frustrate gardeners in Florida, Texas, and Arizona the most, because nobody told them these plants were designed for a completely different climate. Here's the truth before we start. If you're in the cool north or temperate zone, this is your group. These 4 crops were made for your June. But if you're in the hot south, stay with me, because for every crop that doesn't work for you, I'll give you an exact replacement that does. Crop 4, zucchini and summer squash. Zucchini is the fastest fruiting crop on this entire list. Plant it now, and you're harvesting in 40 to 50 days. Cool north and temperate gardeners, this is your moment. Soil is warm. Days are long. Zucchini grows almost visibly fast in these conditions. Direct sow, straight into the ground right now. Upper south gardeners, you can still grow it, but add a thick layer of mulch around the base to hold moisture. Summer heat will stress the plant if the soil dries out between waterings. Hot south gardeners, Florida, Texas, Georgia, Louisiana, standard zucchini will fail in your June. The combination of extreme humidity and heat invites powdery mildew and squash vine borers almost immediately. Your replacement is calabaza or Seminole pumpkin. Same harvest window, built for your climate, far less likely to collapse mid-season. The most important harvest rule for zucchini pick at 4 to 6 inches. The moment you let a zucchini grow past that, the plant shifts its energy toward ripening that one fruit instead of producing new ones. Check your plants every single day once they start producing. The biggest threat to zucchini across all regions, squash vine borers. The best defense is timing. Plant a second round in late June. That second planting falls outside the Maine egg-laying window and gives you a backup harvest even if the first round gets hit. Crop 5, bush beans. Bush beans are the most reliable June crop for most of the country. They germinate in 3 to 5 days in warm soil, need no trellising, and produce a heavy harvest in 50 to 60 days. Cool north, temperate, and upper south gardeners, direct sow right now. 9 plants per square foot. No transplanting bean roots are sensitive to disturbance and never recover well from it. Hot south gardeners, bush beans, will struggle in your June. When daytime temperatures stay above 90 degrees and nights don't drop below 70, the pollen becomes sterile. Flowers drop. Pods either don't form or come out misshapen and tough. Your replacement is southern peas, crop number 8 on this list. They were literally bred for the heat you're dealing with. The mistake most people make with bush beans overhead watering in humid conditions. Wet foliage and high humidity is an open invitation for white mold and gray mold to take over. Water at the base. Use drip irrigation if you have it. Keep the leaves dry. Crop 6, pole beans. Pole beans take slightly longer than bush beans, 55 to 65 days, but they pay you back with a harvest window that lasts 3 to 4 weeks longer. One planting keeps producing well into late summer without needing to succession sow. Cool north, temperate, and upper south gardeners, pole beans are worth the extra 2 weeks of wait time. The continuous harvest means you're not scrambling to eat 40 pounds of beans in the same week like you would with bush beans. Hot south gardeners, same issue as bush beans. Heat kills the pollen and stops fruit set. Stick with southern peas. One rule that cannot be skipped: build your trellis before you sow the seeds, not after the seeds sprout, not when the vines start reaching, before. Pole beans find something to grab within days of emerging, and if there's nothing there, they grab onto neighboring plants and pull them down. The harvest mistake that stops production, leaving old pods on the vine. Pole beans stop producing new flowers the moment they sense mature seeds developing. Harvest every 2 to 3 days without missing a single pass. Miss a few days and the whole vine shuts down. Crop 7. Cucumbers. Cucumbers are ready in 50 to 70 days and are one of the most satisfying summer harvests, but they come with a specific failure mode that most videos never explain. Cool north, temperate, and upper south gardeners, direct sow or transplant now. Train them vertically up a trellis. Vertical growing improves air circulation, keeps fruit off damp soil, and makes harvesting significantly easier. You'll fit more plants in less space and get cleaner fruit. Hot south gardeners' standard cucumber varieties will turn bitter in your summer heat. High temperatures trigger a surge in cucurbitacin, the compound that causes bitterness, and once it's in the fruit, nothing fixes it. Your replacement is Armenian cucumber. It handles extreme heat far better than standard varieties and stays mild even when temperatures stay above 95 degrees for weeks. For all regions, choose burpless varieties when possible. Burpless cucumbers have naturally low cucurbitacin levels, which means two things: less bitterness in the fruit and less attraction to cucumber beetles. The beetles are drawn to cucurbitacin. Lower levels in the plant means fewer beetles showing up in the first place. The single most important rule for cucumbers: never let the soil dry out during fruit development. Water stress at that stage triggers a cucurbitacin spike and ruins the harvest even if you did everything else right. One more thing before we move on. If you're in Florida, Texas, or Arizona and you've tried growing zucchini or cucumbers in June before and failed, that wasn't your fault. Those crops weren't built for your climate. The video you watched just didn't tell you that. Calabaza and Armenian cucumber exists for exactly this reason. Now you know. This group is for the gardeners who just heard me say your replacement is southern peas twice in a row and still don't know what that means. If you're in the hot south or upper south, this is your moment. These two crops thrive in the exact conditions that destroy everything in the previous group. The heat that kills bush beans and zucchini is the same heat that makes okra and southern peas explode. Cool North gardeners, stay with me. There's still something here for you, but it requires a different approach. Crop 8. Southern peas, cowpeas. Southern peas are the most heat-tolerant crop on this entire list. While bush beans collapse when temperatures push above 90 degrees, southern peas hit their peak performance right there. They were bred for this climate. They thrive in it. Hot South and Upper South gardeners, direct sow right now. 55 to 75 days to harvest. No special preparation needed. These plants actually prefer poor soil because they fix their own nitrogen through their root system. Which brings up the most important rule for southern peas: do not apply high nitrogen fertilizer. Ever. The moment you add heavy nitrogen to the soil, the plant puts all its energy into leaves and vines and stops producing pods entirely. If you want to fertilize, use a balanced formula with equal parts nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Nothing nitrogen heavy. Cool North gardeners, southern peas need consistently warm soil to perform. In your region, they'll grow slowly, take closer to 90 days, and produce low yields. They're not worth the space for you. Stick with bush beans or pole beans. For everyone else, if you've never grown southern peas before and you're in a hot climate, this is the most underrated swap you can make. Less disease pressure than beans, less pest pressure, and they improve your soil while they grow. Crop 9. Okra. Okra is built for heat. While most vegetables start to shut down above 90 degrees, okra accelerates. Long days and high temperatures are exactly what it needs to produce consistently. Hot South and Upper South gardeners, direct sow now, 50 to 70 days to first harvest. Florida, Texas, Georgia, Mississippi, this is your crop. It produces all the way through summer and into fall without slowing down. Temperate gardeners, okra is possible in your region, but it needs a head start. Begin with transplants started indoors 3 to 4 weeks before your last frost date. Don't direct sow the soil, won't be warm enough, long enough for seeds to establish and produce before your season shortens. Cool North gardeners, direct sowing okra in your region almost always fails. The soil doesn't stay warm enough long enough. If you want to try it, use transplants and grow them in dark-colored containers that absorb heat from the sun. Choose a fast-maturing variety like jambalaya. It's the shortest season okra available and gives you the best shot in a short summer. The harvest rule for okra is non-negotiable: pick every single day once production starts. Pods that reach beyond 4 inches become woody and fibrous and completely inedible. Daily harvesting also signals the plant to keep producing. Miss 2 days, and you'll find pods that have to be thrown away and a plant that's starting to slow down. One practical warning: okra plants are covered in fine hairs that cause skin irritation on contact. Wear long sleeves and gloves every single time you harvest. It's not optional. The last group is 2 crops, and I'm going to be more straightforward about both of them than most videos ever are. These last 2 crops need a different kind of introduction. Most videos put both of them on every June planting list without any explanation. One of them deserves to be here, but only if you go in with the right expectations. The other one has been misleading beginner gardeners for years. Crop 10. Sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are the longest harvest on this list, 90 to 120 days. That's not a quick turnaround, but June is actually the last realistic window to plant them if you want any harvest at all before frost arrives. Temperate, Upper South, and Hot South gardeners plant now. Zones 5 through 11 can all grow sweet potatoes successfully when planted in June. The heat you have right now is exactly what they need to establish strong vines and develop large roots underground. Cool north gardeners' sweet potatoes are possible, but they need help. Use black plastic mulch laid directly on the soil before planting. It absorbs heat from the sun and keeps soil temperatures consistently warm, even when air temperatures drop at night. Choose Beauregard. It matures in 90 days, the shortest window of any widely available variety. Without these two steps, your season won't be long enough. One rule that applies everywhere: sweet potatoes are grown from slips, not seeds. Slips are small rooted cuttings taken from a mature sweet potato. You can order them online or find them at a local nursery. Do not try to grow sweet potatoes from seed. It doesn't work the same way. The mistake that ruins most sweet potato harvests: high nitrogen fertilizer. Nitrogen pushes the plant to produce large, lush vines and almost no roots underground. Use a balanced fertilizer or one specifically formulated for root crops. The goal is roots, not leaves. Crop 11: Heat-tolerant radishes. I'm going to be honest with you about this one. Radishes show up on almost every June planting list because they harvest in 30 days, and that number looks great on paper. Here's what those lists don't tell you. Standard radishes are a cool season crop. When soil temperatures push above 80 degrees, which happens in June almost everywhere, standard radishes bolt immediately. The root becomes woody, hollow, and so spicy it's inedible. Most university extension programs across the country actively advise against planting standard radishes in June. If you still want to grow radishes in June, you need 3 things working together at the same time. A heat-tolerant variety, specifically Minaway's Summer Cross or a similar summer daikon, thick straw mulch over the entire bed to keep soil temperatures down, and consistent moisture every single day without exception. Miss any one of these 3 and the radishes will fail. Hot south gardeners, don't bother. No variety handles your June soil temperatures well enough to produce an edible root. Use that space for something on this list that actually works for your climate. Cool north and temperate gardeners, it's possible, but the margin for error is small. If you're not confident about consistent daily watering through a heat wave, grow scallions instead. Same harvest window, far less likely to fail, and nobody is ever disappointed by fresh scallions. I included this crop because I want you to go in with accurate expectations, not because I'm recommending it without reservation. Radishes are not an easy June crop. They are a cool season crop that gets put on summer lists because of one number: 30 days. That number is only true when everything goes right, in the right conditions, with the right variety. Scallions harvest in the same window, work in every climate, and fail far less often. If you're choosing between the 2 for a June planting now, you know which one to pick. Before we wrap up, here's everything we just covered, broken down by region. If you're in the cool north, your strongest crops right now are basil, Swiss chard, scallions, zucchini, bush beans, pole beans, and cucumbers. Okra and sweet potatoes are possible with the right setup. Skip southern peas and standard radishes entirely. If you're in the temperate zone, everything in the cool north list works for you. Plus okra and sweet potatoes without the extra steps. Still avoid standard radishes. If you're in the upper south, add southern peas to your list. Everything else applies. Radishes are high risk. If you're in the hot south, your list is okra, southern peas, basil, Swiss chard, scallions, and sweet potatoes. Replace zucchini with calabaza. Replace standard cucumbers with Armenian cucumber. Avoid bush beans, pole beans, and radishes completely. Save this. Screenshot it. Write it down. Whatever works for you, because this is the list you bring to the garden center, not the generic one on the back of a seed packet. Here's the only thing I want you to take away from this video. You don't need to plant all 11 crops. You don't need to overhaul your entire garden. You just need to pick 2 crops from your region's list, the 2 that excite you the most, and get them in the ground today. That's it, 2 crops. Today. Because the gardeners who actually harvest something before summer ends aren't the ones who planned the most. They're the ones who planted something when there was still time. And there is still time. Even if you're watching this in late June, basil, scallions, and Swiss chard still get you a harvest before the season closes. Okra and southern peas will carry you all the way into fall if you're in the south. You are not too late. One question before you go, drop it in the comments. Where do you live and which 2 crops are you planting this week? I read every single one. If this video gave you something the other June planting guides didn't, share it with one gardener in your area. They need this too.